Are you a buyer out playing today's game of homes? Are you trying to get an offer accepted that you can actually live with? I'm SandiWarner with Warner Realty Group. Let's talk about the elements of an offer and give you some scaffolding on which you can figure out how you're gonna place your offer. Today we're going to talk about the three elements of an offer. The three elements are price, contingencies, and closing. All the other little bits and pieces fall into these three major buckets. The first bucket is price. Obviously, price is the seller has put out his property for sale and he said, I want, X amount of dollars. In a normal market, the sellers are going to price their property a little higher than what they'd actually accept. They will work with their realtor. They might pay for an appraisal, and that could come back, say, at $350,000. And sellers get really nervous, and they say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to put it at $350,000 because then I might not get anything over $350,000." So they'll usually tack on 5 to 10% on top of that. Because they know that you, the buyer, are savvy and you're doing your research and you're working with your buyer's agent and you know what that house is worth. So you're going to offer less than the selling price. This current market is anything but normal. Let's talk about price in the time of the buyer zombie apocalypse. The seller mentality is falling into two general themes during this time. The first one is the seller that doesn't need to sell their home. They are the seller that is thinking, geez, maybe I ought to try to capture some of the equity that I've gained in my home. Why don't I put my home up for sale at a price that would make me move? If those homes are awesome, particularly in our area, for example, we are seeing the escape continuing, even though it's spring of 2021 and the pandemic is a little more under control. We are still seeing buyers coming out and wanting homes with pools and homes with more land and so on and so forth. Many offices are not going to reopen, so that is continuing to drive this market. The other seller that we do have, and there are lots of them out there are people that do still have to sell their homes. They might be military that's being relocated. They might have grown out of their home. They might have lost a job and need to downsize. Maybe their last kid's gone to college and the current home is too big for them. All sorts of reasons that sellers are still selling their home. Those sellers are doing very similar things in that they are taking advantage of this high market. It might be getting them to sell a little bit sooner. Many of those sellers are being very tactical, and they are determining what the market value is, what their home should sell for, and pricing at or below market. Why are they doing this? Because there are so many more buyers than there are properties available for those buyers. If you as a buyer are looking at homes that are in the $350,000 range and you want 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a garage, and a yard, and everything you're seeing for $350,000 is a fixer-upper, and somebody smart comes out on the market and theirs is nicer. It's got kitchens, it's got baths, it's got everything else, and they price their house, which maybe really is worth $375,000 or $400,000, and they price it underneath. You are going to get so excited at something that's reasonably done and is a better value. You and all the other 10 buyers that are out there in this particular price point are all going to rush over there, and you're all going to put offers in and you're going to compete with each other. That's really good tactic. So that's a way to drive your price up. How does this help you, the buyer? Price is one factor. In this market, you don't have any leverage with price. If you can only go to $350,000, you need to be looking at homes that are $300,000 to $325,000 in order to be competitive, because you're going to get pushed up. The second element of your offer is your contingencies. A contingency, and I'm just reading you a definition that I found off the interwebs, and it says, a contingency clause defines a condition or an action that must be met for a real estate contract to become binding. A contingency becomes part of a binding sales contract when both parties, the buyer and the seller, agree to the terms of the contract. There are three major contingencies. There are a lot of little elements, but they all fall under these three large buckets. The first bucket is financing. The second bucket is inspections. And the third bucket is appraisal. Under financing, a lot of people have cash sitting in the bank, and that cash is not making any money right now. So the first thing is, if you have any way of making your offer a cash offer, do it. Maybe you have to sell your home first. One thing to consider is it's very unlikely that your home is not going to sell in this market. This is the most competitive sellers market we have seen in decades. Sellers have more leverage now than at any time in recent history that anyone can think of. Sellers can demand a higher price. Sellers can demand more concessions from the buyers, and sellers really hold all the cards. If you have a home to sell and you're looking at a house that's competitive, strongly consider selling your home first. Get your home sold so you have those funds in the bank before you go home shopping. You don't want to be out there doing a Hubbard. You don't want to be out there saying, okay, person whose house I would like to buy, oh, I'd love to buy your house, but I have to sell my house first. Sellers just aren't going to go for that. It is super scary to sell your house first. I understand. Given the leverage that you have in today's market, you have a very, very, very over 90% chance of negotiating a very strong post-closing occupancy. And what that means is you sell your home, you say to the buyer of your home, I want to stay in this home for 3 months, because you need that cash to sit in your account so that you can go and buy your home with cash. You are then making this contingency go away. You no longer have a cash contingency. That's confusing, I know. In a nutshell, consider selling your home first, getting the cash, let it sit in the bank, negotiate a post-closing occupancy so that you don't have to go rent something. You might find even that the buyer of your home doesn't charge you rent or charges you a nominal rent so that you can go buy your home for cash. Super scary. Takes cojones of steel to do that one, but it's going to put you in the driver's seat. So think about that one if you can tolerate that risk. The second one is the inspections. In my experience selling real estate, the seller's biggest fear is the inspections. If you have the wherewithal to waive inspections, it's not a great idea if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're a nervous home buyer, if you don't know how to fix anything, if the house is old, if the house hasn't been renovated. It's not a great idea. From a risk perspective, it's putting all of the risk on you. But ultimately, that's all it's doing. It is moving that risk from the seller to the buyer. Now, you could go do a really thorough walkthrough. You could take Bob the Builder with you. You could take a contractor with you. If you are handy, if you know anything about houses, you might be willing to take that risk. Again, it's a shifting of risk. If that is a risk that you can tolerate, if you are comfortable with that, removing the inspections, waiving the inspections, while not a good idea from a risk standpoint to you, it is a huge benefit to you as a buyer in a competitive market. Weigh it out, think about it, get some advice from people who understand homes. Go look at the home once or twice or 3 times or 4 times, and then consider if that's a tactic for you. The final is the appraisal. Appraisals are scary, and appraisals happen very late in a deal. If you're financing the home, that's fine. You can say that you're waiving appraisal. Your bank's not going to waive appraisal under any scenario that I can think of unless you personally have the cash. And if you have the cash, you should make a cash purchase and do a cash out refi afterwards anyway. Talk to your lender about that. Appraisals are a nail biter. They are a big drag on the whole transaction because It takes a long time, particularly after the mortgage meltdown in 2009. The appraisal process is very hands-off. The bank doesn't get to talk to the appraiser. They don't get to pick their appraiser. Appraisers are people. They are following formulas and they're following a lot of training that they have. And your buyer's agent can do a good buyer's agent, a skilled buyer's agent is going to be able to tell you within a couple $1,000s what that house is going to appraise at. But if you're a cash buyer and you waive appraisals, boy, you just zoomed your offer way up to the top of the pile. Is it a great scenario for you? No. You risk paying more for that house than it's actually worth. That might be okay for you. It's something to think about. The final bucket, the final element of the offer is the closing date. Here's where you can have a little leeway. What does the seller want and need? Do you have a seller that is trying to sell their house so that they have cash so they can buy their next house? Maybe you could offer a long post-closing occupancy. Maybe you could say, hey, seller, we'll close with you on June 15th, but you know what? You can stay in the house till August 31st. Maybe you could even say, hey, we're not going to charge you rent, or we're going to charge you $100 a month in rent. That's something to consider. Can you negotiate a post-closing occupancy? On the flip side, do you have a seller that is fearing a market correction, is worried about a long closing period? They really want this a one and done. They want this closed right away. If you're a cash buyer and you can close it in 2 weeks, as soon as title is done, that could make you a very, very strong buyer. Maybe your buyer wants a long closing. Maybe they just want to be under contract for 2 or 3 months and then close. That's a common scenario if your seller has an investment property and they've already lined up all their summer rentals. Maybe that's something. Ask the question. Work with a buyer's agent that has good relationships with other agents and that will really go in and negotiate for you. If you got a buyer's agent who's like, oh, we can't ask that and we can't do this and everything's a secret and there's no communication, that's not a good buyer's agent. They're not having conversations that can help you. So those are your 3 elements: price, contingency, closing. What can you make super, super strong on your offer? I'm Sandi Warner with Warner Realty Group, making the complex simple. I hope this helped. Bye.